So going back to divine mercy in my soul, I'm looking at four different sections here: 423, 723, 1146, and 793. Pay attention to these passages from the journal. It says, the greater the sinner, the greater his right to God's mercy. The greater the sinner, the greater the right he has to my mercy. Let the greatest sinners place their trust in my mercy. They have the right before others to trust in the abyss of my mercy. You are a bottomless sea of mercy for us sinners, and the greater the misery, the more right we have to your mercy. I want you to notice the main focus there on the word right. The greater the sinner, the greater his right to mercy. This is completely a warped, demonic, and false message. Great, grievous sinners do not have a right to mercy. The only thing that they have a right to, properly speaking, is to judgment and to justice. That's what all of us have a right to. We don't have a right to mercy. We have a need for mercy. Not a right, but a need. And again, mercy goes to those who approach God in humility, with contrition, and seek him sacramentally for absolution, with an amendment of life to sin no more and to avoid the narrow occasions of sin, and with a heart ready and willing to carry a cross, endure to the end, make penance, and do acts of reparation. Sinners do not have a right to mercy, and especially it's scandalous to say that the greater the sinner, the greater his right to God's mercy. No, that's the wrong message to promote. Okay, sinners have a need of mercy. They have a right to God's justice, to God's wrath against sin, his offense against sin. Listen again to the words of sacred scripture, Hebrews chapter 10, verses 26 to 31. It says, if we sin deliberately after receiving knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains sacrifice for sins, but a fearful prospect of judgment and a flaming fire that is going to consume the adversaries. Anyone who rejects the law is put to death without pity on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. Do you think that a much worse punishment is due to the one who has contempt for the Son of God, considers unclean the covenant blood by which he was consecrated, and insults the Spirit of grace? We know the one who said, vengeance is mine, I will repay. And again, the Lord will judge his people. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. That's the message of sacred scripture. Romans chapter 13, verse 4, St. Paul says, but if you do evil, be afraid, for it does not bear the sword without purpose. It is the servant of God to inflict wrath on the evildoer. So again, the message ought to be the greater the sinner, the greater right he has to judgment, not to mercy. But the greater the sinner, the greater need he has of mercy. That has to be the most important message that we get. And that's what you get from the Sacred Heart devotion. It's not what you get from divine mercy, as we're seeing in these passages.